Evening Chelsea fans, welcome back to another week of Chelsea Chat with me, Moose and JB. Don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the bell notification. And don't forget to comment below. As we have every week, we like to get you guys involved as much as we can. The big news on the cards is Chelsea gaining fourth spot and Champions League football next year. And I think probably for me the biggest call out is Frank Lampard doing this against all odds, and we'll go into a bit more detail around this throughout the podcast. But top four with no Eden Hazard, N'Golo Kante out for most of the season, a transfer ban. Kepa is his own segment within this already, and what a lot of our competition would be calling championship players bringing through some of the youth. So I think first thing is respect to Mr. Lampard on that, achieving against all odds Champions League. And we'll be going through that in a bit more detail as to how excited we are for retaining Champions League and being able to retain some of the big talent that we're hoping to get. This week we'll go through probably the disaster that was the Liverpool game. There were a few positives, but we'll talk around that in a bit. The Wolves game that we've literally just stopped watching, obviously regaining that, watching us get top four, and then looking at the transfer tracker, everyone's perfect weekend segment that comes here, and then looking forward to the cup final. Obviously we want to sort of talk around how much we want silverware now that we've got that secure. All eyes on next weekend. So JB, let's start with the negative, the Liverpool game. What was your thoughts? I mean, I don't know about you, I was absolutely fuming. I sort of went off social media and the WhatsApp chat for a number of hours after that game. It was painful to say the least. And not all of it was necessarily our fault. There was defensive issues, and I think we can be the first to sort of say that's been a struggle for us all of this year.
Yeah, it was I mean, it was never going to be an easy game, let's be honest. They won the league very comfortably. They're 30 odd points ahead of us, as the table is complete now. But we started off the game not badly. I saw a lot of criticism for Lampard for getting the system wrong. I don't think he did. I think the system worked well. I think we played okay in parts in the first half. Unfortunately, that first goal, Willian overran it a little bit, lost the ball, and then it was just a great strike. Not much you can do about that. Obviously, the second goal, never a foul, but Trent does a Trent and buries it into the top corner. That's just what he does. I mean, he scored a free kick basically the same against us at the Bridge in the first half of the season. So yeah. I think Kepa probably should have known a little better where it was going and tried to do something a bit better to stop that. But it was what it was. And then from that point on, I think heads were lost a little bit. The third goal defensively, we were all over the place. That was poor. And then Giroud gave us a bit of life just before half time.
When Giroud is that time of the game in which he's pretty much certain to score. I'm a bit gutted I've not been putting money on because I could have called it every single game. But that is sort of the Giroud moonlight hour. You give him a ball in the 45th plus 1 minute, he's going to put the ball on the back.
He's going to bury it. It's not Fergie time. That's Giroud time. But no, it was good to get our noses back in it a little bit. I mean, I still didn't expect anything out of it. Obviously, they got the fourth early on in the second half, and Lampard kind of realised he needed to change something because I think Willian was a bit burnt out. Mount was a bit burnt out because they both put in a lot of effort for the United game. So I think they were a bit tired. So bringing on Pulisic and Hudson-Odoi completely gave us literally new legs up front, and we looked a lot more threatening. The second, Pulisic was outstanding. His play was just, I think he kind of showed that we were playing a team who had already won the league, who had nothing left to play for other than their own, benefit and pride. And he caught them sleeping a few times, but that run for the Abraham goal was just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so we kind of got ourselves back into it, and it's the hope that kills you, isn't it? It's that 4-3, we're pushing, thinking, God, do you imagine coming back from 3-0 down, from 4-1 down and getting a point out of this game to get us Champions League football? let us relax on the last game, and we could have rested some players. But no, they got us on the counter again. Jorginho kind of showed why he's not Kante. Break up a counter attack, and it happened. But I mean, if we were sat here having lost the game against Wolves today and not getting into Europe, then that might have been, a bit of a worse result than it is now. But as we got the points against Wolves and secured it, it now doesn't really feel like it matters as much.
So if we look at it, let's focus on some of the negatives there, because I think it was a sort of tale of two halves, and that comes quite literally in this case. Defensively, we were poor, and we've identified that problem going forward. It wasn't the same game as the Man United game, even though we had the same back five. They just weren't able to keep up with the Liverpool. The Liverpool front three play very differently. They play very tight. They play very confined in that sort of giving pressure against those three centre backs, and they really struggled with that level of sort of pressure coming through. And then obviously Kepa, there was a few places that you could have done better, and this is not dissimilar to every other podcast we've had this season. We've not necessarily seen the best out of those four players, those centre back positions and the keeper. What were your thoughts around how they performed? What was the performances you thought went well? Was anyone played well that you thought in that defensive back line?
Against Liverpool, not really. There wasn't anyone outstanding, but at the same time, I don't think there was any individual blame other than Kepa a couple of times. I don't think he was completely at fault for the defeat, but he just had a bad performance overall. I mean, the first goal, it was top corner, not much you can do about it. The free kick, I think he probably could have done better in terms of, firstly, you've been done by the exact same free kick earlier on in the season, so position yourself a little bit better because you know what's going to come, you know where it's going. But he didn't do that, and he also didn't even try and dive for it. Like, if you're going to get to it or not, at least give it a go. You never know. You could jump a bit further than you expect, and you might get there. But he didn't even. So that either tells me he wasn't set up properly for it, or he didn't believe in himself to go get it, which neither of which is ideal.
And to be honest, he does look like. I mean, we'll move on to the Wolves game, but the fact that he was absent from that game speaks volumes. And we'll move on to that in the transfer tracker as well. But I feel he's probably 1 foot out the door.
There was one point at the end of the game against Liverpool, which for me was the moment I decided 100% I'm done with Kepa now. And that was right at the end. It was already 5-3, so it was literally right at the end. And there was a free kick kind of over in the corner, and it was put in between our defensive line and Kepa. And you could hear, with no fans, you could hear all of our defenders saying, Kepa, Kepa, Kepa. And he just watched it bounce in front of him, literally right in front of him. He could have got it easily with no one near him, and he just watches it. And then it goes to Van Dijk, who luckily heads over the bar, but he could have put that in as well. And I just thought, like, this is a guy who has no confidence whatsoever. He's playing with just so much weight on his shoulders because he knows how expensive he was. He knows the pressure that comes with playing in the Premier League, and he's just not cut out for it. I think maybe he's shown at times he can save some good chances, but not enough. And he's not strong enough. He's not commanding enough of the box. I think he's done now. I think, we spent 70 million, but we just need to move on. That's down the drain now.
Yeah, I think sort of Kepa, and to be honest, he might have a great sort of experience at another club. I think sort of there is too many things that have happened in his history here. Obviously, cup final being one of them, refusing to come off. That arrogance he's never been able to shake that. And I think his performances just are, for a player who is the most expensive goalkeeper in the world, can't live up to that. So I think he'll probably have to move on in the summer, and we'll have to bring in someone else. And that'll be a key point in our transfer tracker segment. But moving on from obviously the negatives, there were some positive performances from that game. As you mentioned in that sort of opening segment, Pulisic had probably one of the best games he's had for us. And that's not sort of quite difficult to go and pitch because he's had some really good performances in sort of his tenure here. He properly switched on, and Liverpool struggled with him. I mean, the Liverpool back four didn't have probably their best performance as well. But for me, he is starting to become a pretty awesome player. Still very young, still needs to learn certain bits and pieces, like in the Wolves game where he was able to be shut out. But for me, that footwork, the speed and pace in which he can twist and turn, that's frightening. I mean, great as a Chelsea fan. As you said, the Tammy Abraham goal, that was unreal. Just to sort of run at their defence with that pace and just the footwork to work around them. And then for his own goal, the confidence just to hold up the ball and smash it into the back net. He, for me, was my man of the match. I know that it's probably, in the grand scheme of things, went to sort of a Liverpool player, but he came on and changed the course of the game from a pretty much a game that was out of our hands to something that was still, I mean, we were 4-3 for quite a large proportion of that game. I was hoping for that draw when he came on, and you could feel it coming.
Yeah.
Just defensively, we let ourselves down. And he wasn't obviously the only player on the pitch. I think, to your point, I don't think it was a tactical error by Lampard in the game. I think there was probably a lack of awareness of how burnt out some of his players were. Willian has been absolutely outstanding since he's come back, and I do hope he gets a new contract. But for me, he just hasn't got, he didn't have the energy in the tank to go and take on a full-strength Liverpool squad. But then bringing on Pulisic, that changed the game, and we'll never know what happens. But I think sort of, I don't know whether Pulisic would have as much of an impact if he'd started. He was great. Sort of Tammy did the job. Wasn't amazing, didn't set the world on fire. I think he's still struggling from the overhang of Werner, and probably didn't help that Werner was in the stands at the Wolves game today. But yeah, the positives, even though there's a loss, there's a lot to take from the game. The other great point, and then a great talking point, was the Lampard video that we all saw, where Lampard decides to shout back to the Liverpool bench, and Klopp was probably the best comment I've heard him say, and I'm going to paraphrase.
It was passion. Pure passion and love for the club.
Yeah. And to be fair, I mean, the whole game probably wasn't helped with the fact that there was fireworks going on in the background. We knew they were going to lift the trophy. So the Liverpool fans were probably, Liverpool squad, the Liverpool backroom staff were as painful as they're always going to be. Even more so that it's going to be lifting the trophy later than that. We'll take what it was. Obviously, it would have been a completely different podcast if that game hadn't gone our way as it did, and we'd lost to Wolves, so we didn't get European football. But on the topic of the Wolves game, we've come off watching that probably about an hour or two ago. That was a tactical masterclass by Lampard there. Not too dissimilar squads. Obviously, Willian wasn't in there, but for me, they just seemed to control the game. First half, the mainstay of the first half was difficult. Nothing seemed to happen too much. We were controlling the game, but very difficult to break the Wolves team down. But for me, that free kick completely changed the whole mentality. Very similar to the Liverpool challenge that we had in the last comment there. But
it's good how things come back around, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's karma at his best.
Yeah.
But winning that, and then Mount, once again, absolutely amazing season. I think for me, that was great for him to top that off. He had an absolutely amazing game. We've mentioned that Pulisic probably was targeted to be man-marked this game, so there was a lot of men on him at all given points. So he didn't have the best of games, but that's probably because he wasn't given the freedom to have the best of games. But that therefore gave Mount an amazing opportunity to sort of come into his own. The free kick was absolutely amazing, very Trent-esque. I was saying earlier, it was very David Beckham-esque, just nicely slotted into the left corner. But that then changed our mentality. We knew that Wolves, by that point, Tottenham were ahead. Wolves had to come at us, and we were able to just soak up the pressure and go forward. Mount giving Giroud an absolutely outstanding ball through to score, and that was no mean feat for Giroud to score in Giroud time again. What were your thoughts? Performance-wise, there wasn't too many difficulties in defence today. 2-0 win to sort of get your top four. Can't really complain, can you? But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think obviously it was a very nervy start from both sides. They both had a lot to play for. There wasn't a hell of a lot of chances kind of early start. I can't think of really any notable chances until kind of after the water break. Without, we don't need to go into all the details of the game, but I think it shows today how far we've come this season, because our game management when we're ahead was really poor to start with at this season. And like that, I think that kind of came to crescendo at the Arsenal game at Stamford Bridge, where they came back into it in the last minute. Abraham was injured. He carried on playing. We tried some stupid stuff and we gave the ball away and ended up getting the equaliser. Since then, it seems that we've kind of learned a bit better how to manage a game that we're winning. We've had some nervy games, don't get me wrong, since then, like the Crystal Palace game as an example, but we still managed to hold it off and keep that result. And we did the same today, except for, we didn't have as much of a nervy situation, but we managed to hold on to it. And I think it shows the maturity of the players now kind of starting to come through, and they're learning a bit more. This isn't Championship football anymore. This is Premier League football. And the way you have to manage the game is completely different. And I think they're picking that up faster than I expected. And it was a great performance. As you said, we didn't really have much to deal with at the back, but I think that's because Kovacic again was outstanding and managed to cut off a lot of the stuff going through the middle. Even when they brought on Adama Traore, I think we clearly kind of knew that was going to happen, because straight away we had two players on him at all times.
Yeah,
and he couldn't get away from it. And Jimenez didn't really do a lot during the game, which
probably helped that Zuma absolutely beasted him at one point in the game.
Yeah, almost knocked him cold out. But no, it was a brilliant performance overall. I went into it nervous as hell, thinking, oh God, if we don't get top four, I'm going to be absolutely devastated. We got those two goals, and I was still a bit nervous because typical Chelsea, I could just have seen us throwing it away completely. But and obviously keep an eye on the United and Leicester game at the same time, seeing that was 0-0, and if we then conceded 3 goals, we were back out of the thing. So, and I think it's such a big deal for us now to get into the top 4, not just to play Champions League football next year, but I think the financial benefits you get with that as well is going to do wonders for us in this transfer window, as well as obviously the allure of playing in the Champions League for any potential signings. So that's absolutely massive for us, and that could be huge for our recruitment going forwards, not just with like Havertz, but with any defenders and goalkeepers we're going to be looking at, which obviously we're about to cover in your favourite segment.
The Transfer Tracker. Interesting, because we've been identifying issues in our squad. Lampard seems to have identified the same errors in sort of where his team gone wrong. I can only assume that's because he's tuning in every week. But there's definitive issues now. Well, we've managed to improve our attacking. It looks very promising from some of the reports this week that Kai Havertz is nearly a done deal. So confirmations from Sane and apparently his sister, which I don't know how Jamie's found that out, but I'll leave him to his own sources on that.
It looks like, from what I'm reading, that Czech is going over to Germany. Well, apparently he's flying over there today, so he's going there to finalise the negotiations with Bayer Leverkusen. So it looks like it's a done deal now. It sounds like we want to pay about 60 million euros up front, and the rest in add-ons for performance-related clauses. I mean, that's again a great signing. No, yeah, it looks like Havertz to Chelsea is pretty much done. Hopefully, it'll be announced this week. If not, it'll probably be just after the cup final, I'd imagine.
Yeah, but that'd be absolutely outstanding. Our attacking looks dangerous. That looks like someone who could start to break down that 36-point gap we've had with Liverpool this season. We just need to start to really push against that. My main worry are some of our defensive gaps. We've been talking around this. I mean, left back is a main issue. I don't think we can probably continue to play 5 at the back just so we can effectively throw in numbers at the problem. And we know from a number of conversations on Chelsea Chat over the last couple of weeks that Alonso is only half decent in a back 5. I think there is still an issue with left back, and there's been a number of names bounded around now. I think Chilwell may have probably cooled down a little bit. The only benefit we've got there is Leicester don't have Champions League football to contend with next season, which may be an attractive component. Centre back is a challenge, and we're seeing some interesting names come through. So I know JB's put in John Stones as a potential, which is a strange one for me because he's not the player we need in my eyes. He's a player that City want to get rid of, and I think the idea behind it is Frank wants to try and reinvigorate his career, but I'd rather not, to be honest.
It's a very strange one. I've seen it now more. If I see something once, I probably won't mention it. But when I see something repeatedly, it's kind of it gets a bit of traction, and I can't imagine John Stones doing anything positive to our defence. I think he is pretty much, if not the same, worse than what we already have. There's not much really to say on this other than no thank you.
He's probably a great player, but I can't see him too dissimilar from Rudiger. And another Rudiger is not what we need. A Van Dijk is what we need. And there isn't many Van Dijks around at the moment.
No.
And so I know that they've got Atletico Madrid's Jimenez potentially as an opportunity there. There's a number of other. We seemingly seem to have dropped down the list when we're talking around Koulibaly. So I don't see that one being a real option there.
I think he likes light blue too much, so he's probably going to end up at City. But the Jimenez one's quite interesting. He looks like a really good player. He's kind of, I would say he's in the mould of a John Terry style player. I wouldn't say he's as good as John Terry because no one is, but he's that kind of style of player. Not again, I wouldn't say communication wise or leadership wise, but he will put his body on the line. From the clips I've seen of him, and I remember him playing at the Bridge a few years back. But I've seen some clips of him recently. Like literally chucking his head in front of shots and everything. He's that kind of player, which I'm not against, but I think he comes with quite a hefty release clause, which knowing Atletico Madrid, then they will stick to. So that's probably the only concern there. If you're going to pay that kind of money, you might as well just go and try and get Koulibaly.
The other ones I've heard potentials are Jerome Boateng. He's 32. I don't think he'll probably be cheap. Is the only thing I can see because he's in his last sort of year of his contract. And then there was Fali Ramadani.
Sorry, what was that?
That guy, or Diego Carlos. Now, all of those guys I am unaware of, and going back to Jimenez, I think he would be an amazing fit, but leads us on very nicely to our last position, is I don't see us going in and sweeping two of the best players out of Atletico Madrid anytime soon and spending in excess of 200 million to go and achieve that, because I just don't think they'll likely give us two players. But what seemingly has become probably more prominent and more important is our goalkeeping situation. One of the players that keeps being bound around gets us very excited, although it's very difficult to see actually happening, is Oblak. For me, probably sits as one of the best goalkeepers in the world. Absolutely amazing. Seeing all the pundits at the moment, he would be one of those players who turns around our season, but comes with £104 million release clause. So it's not cheap, considering we've already spent 75 million on Kepa. To go and break the world record a second time to get this right is a bold move. I don't know if Atletico are going to be interested in Kepa, if I'm going to be honest, because we're going to need to offload him as well. He's not got the cheapest sort of wage bill. We equally need to get rid of Kepa as well as bring in someone new. Oblak would be my perfect solution to that problem. He's just a very expensive one.
Yeah.
Have you heard much more on that?
Not really, other than that they wouldn't be interested in any swap deals. They want cold hard cash. I mean, for me, just pay it. Just get him, because he is the best goalkeeper in the world, in my opinion. You see that performance he had against Liverpool in the Champions League. Unbelievable. He has everything that we want in a goalkeeper. So it's, for me, it's one of those, just take my money, just go get him. But as you said, we need to get rid of Kepa at the same time. I don't even know if we're going to have the funds to buy Havertz for 80, 90 million, whatever, and then go and get Oblak and then still have money for a centre half and a left back. It's one of those. I think Marina's going to have to play around a bit and find out what the best situation is. We got so many options now for all of the positions we're looking into. It's difficult to tell. There is one thing I wanted to bring up though, which I've not seen it mentioned anywhere. So it's not a rumour or anything like that. It's just me. Thiago Silva's out of contract with PSG. He's leaving PSG at the end of the season on a free.
I'd take him.
Doesn't that sound like the perfect kind of cover for a season to bring that experience, that leadership, that communication side of things? Put him alongside like a Kurt Zuma for a year. That to me sounds like ideal. I think I've seen him linked with Arsenal. Obviously, he's best friends with David Luiz and obviously Arsenal, another team looking at defenders. But for me, he'd be a great shout.
I've seen him more linked with Everton, and that's re-linking up with Carlo. Because defensively, they've got a lot of young players up at Everton. Defensively, they've not looked the most sure up as well. I think defensively in the Premier League for the first time in a number of years, we probably look less sort of defensively sound across the board than the Liga, Bundesliga. We seem to be lacking in good talent in the space, and I think it's a great shout. To be honest, you heard it here first, Chelsea. Yeah. Sort of sourcing rumours, not only repeating them.
Thiago Silva for a year or two, he can do a job, and then by that time, someone like Tomori is going to be ready to step in, and everything he would have learned to go alongside Kurt Zuma, and that could work out nicely.
It's a great shout because it solves a lot of problems. It's not an upfront cost; you're just paying his wages, which aren't going to be cheap. But for a season, you give him a 1-year contract, which fits nicely with Chelsea's mantra with players of a certain age, but we're bringing him to do a job to mature some of the youth, and then we see how that plays. And I've heard he does want to play like a lot of players now, wants to play in the Premier League to sort of complete that list. I think that's not a bad shout. And then that gives us the transfer funds to go and spend big in a goalkeeping position. Because to your point, I'm as much as UEFA have sort of opened up the window for us to spend as much as we want, with Man City being let off in a completely alleged corrupt way. And equally, we'll put a pin in some of the other transfers because I think we're going to touch on some of those in some of the future podcasts during the very short time before the next season starts. Moving on, our first opportunity for silverware this season. Arsenal. What are your thoughts? Who do you reckon is going to play? How do you reckon we're going to sort of handle this sort of game?
It's a tough one, really. I think he'll probably stay with the same system. Arsenal have been playing 5 at the back. I wouldn't be surprised if Lampard matches them and basically just says we're better. We have if he goes, we've got a better 11 than yours, so we're going to match you and beat you that way. The 5 at the back system seemed to work as well against teams who also play 5 at the back. It was the same today, and I think I wouldn't be surprised if we saw pretty much the same team. Maybe if Kante is fit, he might come back in because Lampard said in his conference yesterday there was a chance he could have played today. He didn't, which maybe means that he's holding him back for that cup final, which that would be a really nice surprise to see him back in the starting 11 for that game. I think you're probably going to see the same wide players unless Willian comes back. But then who are you dropping? Are you dropping Pulisic? Are you dropping Mount?
Personally, I would play Willian and Pulisic for this game and bring Mount on as an impact sub. And the reason I say that is I think Willian offers a different style, and I think Pulisic's speed and pace will absolutely run the fullbacks of Arsenal ragged. Tierney and
Bellerin or Cedric.
I just don't think they've got the legs for it. And they're going to play Agent Louise. I really hope we're just absolutely ruining that space. I'm half tempted to go and put money on a 45 minute sort of goal by Giroud. Early first half. for a goal in that space. But for me, I think you play that mentality because I think Willian offers something different. Because they'll follow in today's game, they'll be expecting someone like a Mount to play well. We changed that up. We potentially play Kante and Kovacic, and then just sort of have Reece James and Alonso going down the wings. I think that for me would be a great squad. It just depends on the people's fitness. That would be a great squad for us to go into that.
The thing is, I think if Kante's back, you might also see us going back to a 4 at the back system, because he gives you then the opportunity to play those the 2 number 8s in Mount and possibly Barkley coming back in, or even Kovacic. So you could have basically everyone you want playing. You're just losing a centre back, and I mean, Arsenal do have a very good attack. They've been pretty good for the last few games. They've looked in good form, and they are dangerous. So it just depends how he wants to play it. Obviously, I mean, you look at how they won the semi-final. They had a solid defence in that game, funnily enough, and they were just kept playing on the counter. And that's what Kante is good at. He's good at breaking up the counter attack. So if he comes in, you could play 4 at the back with Kante just in front of them. And it's going to allow us then to have a bit more going forward in terms of the central midfield players. So you could see Mount, Pulisic and Willian all in the starting 11 if that's the way he decides to go. You'd just be losing Jorginho out of the mix.
Which I wouldn't be too disappointed with.
Really, no.
And for me, yeah, I'd love that. It really depends on Kante's fitness. To your point, even today, what showed was that Arsenal got a great attack. Aubameyang, real goal threat. Will be interesting how he comes up. I think they'll probably position him probably more against either Reece James, because defensively, A, it shuts out another attacking threat for us, and then B, put some pressure on him defensively, which he has struggled in recent games. And then Lacazette against some of our attacking defensive players is going to be interesting. So I don't think we can downplay their attack as much, and equally our defence is going to struggle with that. It will be amazing if we do bring Kante back in, because I think he's the exact player that we need to sort of change the game up. And I think we need to hit them hard rather than sort of just soak up their pressure. But for me, I'm looking forward to the game. I think sort of, for me, the season's been a success. We can take sort of top 4 and just run with that. I'd love to do Wolves a favour after today. Not only earn ourselves some silverware, but give them Europa League.
And how nice would it be to win the FA Cup in the 50th anniversary since our first ever FA Cup victory?
Exactly. I mean, to be honest, I'm trying to get hold of that kit that you've got there, but it is damn hard to get hold of.
It is nice. It is very nice.
But for me, I'm feeling positive. Arsenal probably had a very similar season to us, but just not successful. Struggled with a lot of players, lost some of their defensive players. I've had David Luiz, which I think is just a problem in itself. I'm just waiting for one of those penalties to be sort of ticked off in our game.
Watch him score against us next week now.
But yeah, for me, I'm looking forward to that. I think that could be a really interesting game. Wembley game's always interesting. There's nothing really to play for. The only angle we've got coming into it is Arsenal have got probably a bit more riding on it to try and get Europa League by winning the FA Cup. So we'll see how that goes, to be honest. I'm thinking that's a win for us. But we'll do some of our predictions and things later down this week. It's been a great Chelsea chat. Love that everyone's been listening. And don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell notification and comment below. Anything you thought we've talked around well or thought we've been talking out of our behind on, please feel free to comment. Bulldogs, I mean, or any other breeds. I'd like to say we're not biased around any. We're not breedist on any dog breeds. We'd love to hear what you guys are thinking around. And until next week, you stay classy.
Cheers, guys.